after record-breaking winds were recorded last Friday, the fallout of Storm Éowyn continues. A number of schools across the country suffered varying degrees of storm damage on Friday. Some will remain closed today. Over 100,000 people are still without water, with the further 126,000 households deemed to be at risk of losing their water supply. Now, we're joined by Ralph Riegel, Southern correspondent with the Irish Independent, to get an overview of what's going on. But first, Margaret Attridge, head of water operations for Uisce Éireann, is on the line. Margaret, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
Now, first of all, people lose the water. They associate that more with frost and snow and ice than they do with wind. So I presume it's to do with power.
That's right, Pat. We need power to operate our treatment plants and pump water right throughout the networks. So the main issue for us since last Friday has been the loss of power across the country.
Now, you'd imagine that you guys would actually have generators as backup power to make sure that something like this doesn't happen, because water, even more than electricity, is a key component to living.
Yeah, we have generators at our larger treatment plants, so you would have noticed that there was no supply interruptions to our larger cities and towns throughout the country. But we have 8,000 assets, water treatment plants, reservoirs, pumping stations, where we have a power connection going from the electricity network into our infrastructure. So it's very difficult to have generators at all those locations. So the way that we operate is that, in areas that are most at risk, kind of the West Coast, Dingle Peninsula up to Mayo, Donegal, we'd have stockpiles of generators, and then we mobilise them out to where they're needed in advance of a storm approaching. So we've made good progress.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you actually deployed many of those generators to areas of anticipated problem. How good were your estimations? I mean, did you have those generators in places where they were actually needed?
Yeah, well, there was very good quick recovery there on the Dingle Peninsula, where we deployed the first lot of generators. That's where the storm hit first on the south coast. And we're now able, in fairness, the ESB have restored a lot of the power down south, so we're now able to remobilise those generators and move them further north where there has been a wider impact.
Yeah. Now, the figures I gave there, 100,000 people still without water and a further 126,000 deemed to be at risk. Why might they lose their supply at this point?
Of those 126,000, they're in an at-risk category because we don't have any power going to the treatment plant, but we still have water in storage, so they are being supplied from storage. So that's why we'll be focusing on getting generators out to those locations, or working with the ESB to get power restored over the coming days to get water back as quickly as possible.
Now, given that the frequency of storms is likely to increase with climate change and all the rest of it, is there an argument for, if you like, case hardening the network of treatment plants so that you have either solar with battery storage to ensure you've got continued power availability, or else generators to be deployed more permanently across the network?
That's definitely something we will have to look at, revisit that post the storm and the other storms we've had over the last few months. We have, not all our assets have the capability of plugging in generators, so there has been some delay in some locations in getting an electrician out, to rural locations to change wiring, and safety has to be our priority. So while we have a plentiful supply of generators, it's just taking time to get them the infrastructure ready so we can actually connect them up and do so in a safe manner. We've actually one case this morning where out in the Aran Islands now, thankfully power is back this morning to most of the Aran Islands except for Inishmaan. So the Irish Coast Guard is providing us support this morning to fly a generator out there. But again, a lesson learned, we probably should have one permanently out there.
I'm reading some of the text here. Could ESB, Uisce Éireann, etc. please give some info on the radio about where their hubs are? Managed to get out to where there is power now, but at home, no power, no water or phone service, but we have a battery-operated radio. Any reason why we'll have no return of these things until February the 5th? I know a reason won't change the outcome, but it would be nice to know. We've had to throw out loads of food, and our daughter and baby and small children have had to leave and rent an Airbnb. Another one, medically fragile small child in our house, no electricity or water. We've been advised it won't be restored until the 31st at 9 p.m. Very difficult when storing meds, charging vital medical equipment and keeping 10-year-old brother regulated. Another one, as an electricity customer who has no supply, I'm told I won't have for some time. Am I going to be charged the standing charge for the days when no electricity has been supplied to me? I also had no supply for 5 days earlier in the month, so the days are adding up. I have 2 meters. It would be great if you could get someone to explain themselves. Anyway, that's not for you, Margaret. But generally speaking, the information about hubs.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of hardship out there and people trying to, survive in these very difficult circumstances. And it's very cold at the moment as well. And being without power is one thing, but being without power and water is another thing. From our point of view, we have where people have been without water for a long time. We have alternative water supplies set up in a lot of locations now across the country, probably about 50 locations. And this is people can go with their own water container and collect water. Now the locations of those are available on our website www.water.ie. But like in some areas, for the elderly or vulnerable people, they may not be able to get out to collect water themselves. So they can contact our customer care centre on 1800 278 278 and we will deliver water to them. We're getting really good support from the civil defence across the country as well, who are supporting us in delivering water out to old and vulnerable people and to nursing homes as well in the communities. We've been prioritising making sure that we can maintain supply to nursing homes.
Okay, so that number is 1-800-278-278. And, for people who maybe don't have power and therefore a mobile phone has run out of charge and they can't call you, I mean, all we can do is suggest that people should think of their neighbours and who might be vulnerable and help them out.
Absolutely, yes. And look, we are, like each local authority, county council now is setting up a local coordination group, the local hubs that you referred to, and to look at the humanitarian response, across their areas, where people are affected by, no communication, no power, no water. It's very difficult for people. So we are now sitting in on that group. So if information comes back in from the communities through that coordination group, we'll be able to contribute to the response locally.
All right. It does seem as if some sort of national committee should be convening to harden our infrastructure generally against the prospect of such severe storms recurring in a relatively short time. Margaret, thank you very much for joining us. That's Margaret Attridge, Head of Water Operations at Uisce Éireann. Ralph Regan, Southern Correspondent with the Irish Independent. Ralph, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
Now, the reason we're going to you is because it seems as if the worst of the effects of the storm were in your area, not so much the southeast or the east coast, but mostly the southwest, the west and the south suffered. So what can you tell us? An overview of where things are improving and where things are not.
Yeah, very much so, Pat. I suppose if you go from it, it was the Atlantic seaboard that really took the worst of this. But such was the violence and the power of Storm Éowyn that inland areas got very badly hit as well, in places like Roscommon, Westmeath, even places like Offaly and Laois that would be far inland were again very badly impacted by these winds. So at the peak, there was 768,000 people lost power. Now, in fairness to ESB networks, they've been working virtually round the clock, sometimes in appalling weather conditions, to try and repair the damage, unprecedented damage that was done to the electricity grid. Now, at the moment, there's 522,000 people have had their power restored, and over the next couple of days, there's going to be between 100 and 150,000 people will have power restored. The major concern is that somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 people won't have supplies restored until February the 1st or possibly even after that. And those customers will be the ones that are in the most isolated and difficult to access areas. So the worst of the outages at the moment would be parts of Kerry. If you go up to Clare, Galway, Mayo, Roscommon, and then places like Sligo, Donegal, Westmeath. The worst in terms of general impact is Galway, both in terms of water and in terms of electricity. And such has been the impact that a number of schools, we don't have a precise figure as yet, but we understand that it's certainly well north of a dozen to 18 schools have decided not to open today because of either lack of water, lack of power supplies, or in certain cases, even structural damage that was caused to the school.
I'll read you some of the comments coming in. My child's school was damaged by snow on the 1st of March last year. The Department of Education still hasn't fixed the leaks, which have spread and further damaged the school. Are they going to take the same myopic approach to fixing the schools damaged last Friday? Another one, I drove past a school this morning. It struck me that the hall of that school could have been open to provide facilities to people without power. Secondly, hot food could have been provided via such school halls. It's shocking the lack of community effort across the country. And then Dara O'Leary says, go to the community welfare officer. It's truly shocking. In the USA, the federal government would be out within hours saying funds will be made available for people affected, whereas in Ireland it's radio silence. It's distasteful. Well, by the way, Donald Trump was musing over closing down FEMA, the federal relief agency. He thinks it should be done locally. So on that basis, our FEMA, if it did exist, would then have to defer to the local authorities to do the work. As someone without power, heat, water or internet since last Friday at 5:20 a.m, slates blown off the roof, front and back in northwest Meath, I have to ask, was the government only told yesterday? Met Éireann's forecast was incredibly accurate. There was going to be massive infrastructural damage. Yet it was only yesterday that someone woke up in Kildare Street and started talking about the need for community hubs. This was day 4. And then we have repeated messages that all we need to do is check the websites, electricity, broadband, check the websites of ESB and Uisce Éireann. That's from Jared in Brunbosna in Westmeath. And that is true. If people are depending on their mobile phones, they've no power, the mobile phone runs out of charge, and they haven't got a power bank from which to charge it, what then do they do? My in-laws who are elderly live in Clare, and the update on ESB networks is that their power will not be restored until the 5th of February, which will be nearly 2 weeks. All of this caused by falling trees. No one talking about removing trees alongside cables everywhere. This is from Dave with no power in South Mayo. And they're talking about returning of power on the 5th of February. I live 6 miles from Galway City, no communication, no mobile phone coverage, no power. There isn't a sign of an ESB truck in situ, let alone army or civil defence, that they're all talking about. It's a complete joke, the national response. And another one, intriguing, why is there a boil notice in place now in Loughrea and Galway? We have no water, and yet they're telling us to boil it. There's so many more comments like that. So, Ralph, it will be a while, and my heart goes out to the ESB crews. Yesterday was horrendous in terms of weather. This other little storm, Herminia, that came in and made conditions for work atrocious, and yet they had to be out there.
Yeah, very much so, Pat. I mean, I'm based in Cork, and it has been absolutely appalling. Blustering, very strong winds, torrential rain, and yet you do have ESB network crews out trying to repair lines. Now, they have been assisted. There's been, I think, about 60 electrical engineers have been transferred from the UK to Ireland. There's been, I think, 30 of those have gone to Northern Ireland, which again has been very, very badly hit by Storm Éowyn. And it's about 24 of those engineers are assisting ESB networks. There's also the possibility that repair crews could be deployed from continental EU. Of course, for our last storm, we had a number of engineers that were brought over from France to try and help the repair effort. But such is the unprecedented nature of the damage. We're talking about twice as many households lost power as did for Storm Ophelia back in 2017, that the repairs are simply enormous. I mean, and that's what they're saying, is that there could be somewhere between 80 to 100,000 people who won't get their power back until February the 1st or later.
I think ESB and probably Uisce Éireann are doing the right thing. They're under-promising, and they probably will over-deliver. In other words, they'll get everything back on stream much quicker than they're saying. But it's better than over-promising and then not delivering. So
yes, I think very much so, and you can certainly rest assured that certainly on behalf of Uisce Éireann and ESB networks, as well as the various telecom providers, they're doing everything that they possibly can to fast track the repairs. But it's such an unprecedented storm in terms of its violence and in terms of its consequences. And the thing that is a wake-up call for all of us, Pat, is that these type of storms, which we never, we had them in Ireland once every generation, but storms of this power and this violence unfortunately look like they're going to become much more commonplace.
Ralph Riegel, Southern correspondent for the Irish Independent, thank you very much. And by the way, the ESB are warning about scam callers claiming to be from ESB, helping you out with your power outage in exchange, of course, for information on your credit card and all the rest of it. They are scam calls. Do not engage with them.